Welcome to the Care Right podcast, your go-to resource for all things elder care. Guiding us through this journey is Annalee Kruger, the founder of Care Right Incorporated, and she has been steadfastly supporting families across the United States. Each episode brings you expert insights, innovative strategies, and practical advice, ensuring that you're well equipped to provide the best possible care for your loved ones. Expect to gain valuable knowledge, learn from real-life stories, and get inspired to take action in your own caregiving journey. So buckle up as we dive into an in-depth discussion of elder care planning and together embrace the journey of caring for aging loved ones on the Care Right podcast.
Hi, everybody. My name is Annalee Kruger. I'm the owner of Care Right Incorporated. We work with families all across the country in developing customized aging plans. Who comes to us? It's usually the burned out son and daughter who have been taking care of mom and dad for a number of months, weeks, or years, and they're realizing that they're in over their head and they're getting burned out. So families call us. We've been virtual since 2012. Families don't live down the street from each other anymore like they used to 30 years ago when I first started. So we work with families and develop customized aging plans through the course of several, usually 5 to 8 family meetings that I facilitate with you and your family. I find out what's working well with your situation, what's not working well, what are the goals as you age, because you're all on these calls together. What are your goals as you age? If it's to age in place at home, that's great. How can we make that happen? What's your financial picture look like? Because that always determines what our options are. And what solutions can we put in place to help that goal come into fruition? We also look at, just in case they're not able to stay at home, where might it make sense for mom and dad to live? If mom and dad live in Tucson, Arizona, but all of you 4 kids live in 4 different states, who's going to be there to help advocate for them as they get more frail, elderly, or their dementia progresses? So it's really putting a customized plan together, bringing enough supports into the home, if that's the goal, or if the family and your parents have already decided that they've tried staying at home and it's no longer feasible. We help you with that next step of which kind of care communities would be a good fit for you. We do all of that market research. We get their waiting list, their state survey findings, floor plans, camera policy. So my team does all of that market research for you and outlines different options. We also teach families what are the differences in levels of care. What's the difference between independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, all of those different levels of care. We also teach families how to do the tour of those facilities with confidence, what questions to ask, what to look for. So we provide a 6-page checklist on what questions to ask and what to look for. We also provide a checklist on how to be a bold advocate for your loved one, whether they are at home with home care or they are in a care community type setting or the hospital. So we have 2 versions, basically: the customized aging plan, where we put it together with you and your input. And then families can implement the aging plan, or families can also then, after the aging plan is developed, they can retain Care Right on a monthly care package basis on implementing and overseeing that plan of care or that aging plan. So without further ado, as you know, I have guests always on the podcast that bring value, information, and education and services. Use my guests as a resource for you and your family. So I'd like to introduce Harlan Accola today. He is with Fairway Mortgage. He has a nationwide, or Fairway Mortgage is a nationwide company that helps find solutions, financial solutions to help seniors age in place at home using reverse mortgages. All right, Harlan, take it from here.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Annalee. What you're doing is so incredibly important, and we can't do what you do, but we can help with money, because the old saying is that money isn't everything, but it's reasonably close to oxygen. And so we just kind of need it. And about 50 people clicked off your podcast as soon as the words reverse mortgages were mentioned. So I ask everybody that's still on, give us some time before you just tune out, because that's what I would have done 18 years ago, Annalee. Living in Wisconsin like you, I got an invite to a reverse mortgage seminar in Miami in January 18 years ago. The only reason that I went to that seminar was because it was 20 below zero in January in Wisconsin. And so certainly I wanted to go to Miami. But I hated reverse mortgages. I told people to stay away from them. They were a ripoff. I listened to Dave Ramsey and some of the other people on the radio or TV and just thought they were bad. And I didn't know exactly why they were bad, but I just thought they were bad. And they're going to lose the house. They're going to rip off the kids. My standard comment was, don't get a reverse mortgage because it screws the old people and hurts their kids. End of story. And then I can't believe how just really naive I was not to investigate things a little bit further. But fortunately, I did 18 years ago. It made a dramatic difference in home care for my parents. My dad had a stroke, who was taking care of my mom, who had dementia. And for the last 3 years of their life, they were able to stay in their house because we had did a reverse mortgage for them many years before. The same thing applied to hundreds of people that I've worked with, where we've kept people aging in place in their home with home care in many cases when they didn't have to go to assisted living. We know how many people wanted to go to assisted living the last 2 years with COVID,
Right.
not very many. And so we're able to keep them at home for a longer period of time. And so there's nothing more important to myself and our team of people that work with this throughout the nation than long-term care. If somebody is well and they're doing great, one of the first questions we ask them is, do you have long-term care insurance? Have you worked with a financial planner to know whether or not you're going to use this money for long-term care, where the money is going to come from? Is your estate plan put together accordingly? So the first and most important thing we try to do is to help people with this when they're not sick and they don't need it. Get an umbrella when it's not raining. But as you know, as you started out talking in this podcast, a lot of people don't come until the storm has come and it's pouring down rain. And now what do? I got that call at 4 o'clock in the morning when my dad had a stroke and was on his way to the hospital, and he was not out of the hospital for 6 months. And what do we do with mom right now? Because mom has dementia and she can't stay alone. And then what do we do with dad when he comes home? And so money was a very significant part of that. My dad was a small town Wisconsin farmer, not a tremendous amount of money, some money left in his IRA. We had a line of credit with a reverse mortgage on his house that we could use without paying it back. And so we used that primarily to pay for the home care that was only about $8,000 a month back then. My sister helped out somewhat. We also gave her some money to put her career on hold, so to speak. And so really, the reverse mortgage is something that's very personal to me because we used it to help my mom and dad. We used it to buy long-term care insurance for my uncle, who needed it when his wife needed the long-term care. She fell and broke her hip. Her dementia got worse, and my uncle needed to use it. So a lot of people ask me what my qualifications are. Well, I've been doing this for over 20 years, 18 years of reverse mortgages. So I know a lot about mortgages and I can go through my designations, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is I've worked with over 1,000 of my clients at the kitchen table. We've done thousands more that I've assisted with through Fairway. And so my parents had one, my wife's parents have one now. I'm getting one next month. I'm 62 next month and I'm setting up mine right away, even though I don't need it. I'm doing it so it's in place. My uncle had one. My sister has one. As soon as she turned 62, she bought a house with a reverse mortgage. So I don't know a lot about a lot of things, but I know a lot about reverse mortgages, long-term care, and financial planning, and what happens in the last quarter of our lives. And we are so important to be able to not do what you do, but to be able to fund what you do, because what you do costs money, and it should. It's a tremendous amount of time and effort and knowledge that you're conveying to these people. And quite frankly, everybody should be talking to you before they have a problem.
Right.
But certainly when they have a problem, they need to reach out to you right away, because there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. You've already invented the wheel and it's already there in a much better place than than I've seen anywhere. And I've traveled a lot in this country with Fairway, and your system and what you have down is incredibly important. And the only reason people would not use it is because they can't afford it, or they think they can't afford it. And here there's tens of thousands of rolls of $100 bills in most people's living rooms, and they're afraid to use it because the home is paid off and it has to stay that way because that's what we've always thought. And yet using your home to stay at home is one of the smartest things. Let me explain a little bit about kind of demystify reverse mortgages, and stop me anywhere along the way, Annalee, because sometimes I get in a roll and get all excited about this stuff, and I just keep talking. So stop me if I miss some things along the way. The best way I can explain reverse mortgages in retirement planning is with this very simple picture of 3 circles and 2 rectangles. Everybody has 3 buckets of wealth that owns a home. They've got their bucket 1 was their ability to make money, their ability to earn commissions or run a business, or later when they retire to get pensions or Social Security. They put money away in 401ks or IRAs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, whatever. And then also people put hundreds of thousands of dollars into something called home equity, which is interesting because people think they're putting it into their home, which they are. But once you put money into your home, it turns into home equity and it becomes unusable. It's worthless. So if I have a $500,000 home and it's paid off, it doesn't do anything for me when I want to buy a tank of gas, when I want to pay for care, when I want to buy food, nothing. However, all a reverse mortgage does is waves a magic wand and turns some of your home equity into usable cash in a risk-free way so that you will never be forced to move out of your house until you want to. Now, if we think about the life cycle of how this money works, everybody makes a lot of money during their lifetime. Even if you make $30,000, $40,000 a year, you make $1 million during your 20 to 60 year period. All of that money goes up to this top pre-retirement wallet. And you make a lot of money, and most of it evaporates right off the top, and you spend it on food and clothes and kids and cars, something called the cost of living. Yeah. However, you try to save a little bit of that, 5, 10, 15, 20%, and you drop that into bucket 2. And you give it to your financial advisor, or you give it to your 401k at work, whatever. But what people don't realize is right now, 25 to 30% of their income is being poured into bucket 3. Yes, you need a place to live. Obviously you're putting money into your house payment so you have a place to live, but you're also putting it away so that you own your house someday and you have equity. But what good does that equity do you if you can't use it other than talking about it? So you get down into 62 and over, and your income from bucket 1 maybe slows down. You don't work as much, or you quit during COVID, or you lost your job during COVID, or whatever. So you go to your Social Security maybe in bucket 1, or your pension. You go to your financial advisor in bucket 2 and say, well, I need some of that IRA money now because I'm not working anymore, and I still got to pay the high gas prices, and utility prices are up, and inflation is crazy right now. And so you start pulling money off from your nest egg. But very few people go to bucket 3 and say, hey, Mr. Mortgage Guy, we've given you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 40 years. Can we have some of it back? Seems like a incredibly obvious thing to do, but nobody does it.
Right.
So Annalee, what we do is explain to people before they get into trouble, and then when they get into trouble, when they call you and the kids call you or whatever, that there is a bunch of money sitting in your living room, and it is the cheapest money that you can use. Because, for example, when my dad had his stroke, his IRAs were doing 10, 15, 20%. And it was taxable. If we pulled $8,000 a month out of his IRAs, it would have cost us 20, 30% in taxes, not to mention the gains that he would have had to give up because we were spending his money. We were able to get money out of his house for only 5% back then. Now it's even cheaper, but we're able to pull that money out. You don't have to write a check for it ever until after you pass away and after they moved out of the house, then the loan was due. But they didn't have to make any payments, and we could pull money out for 4%. It just went up against the equity of their home. When they passed away, there was still equity left in their house. So sure, it makes sense to start with bucket 3. But I would bet, Annalee, when you talk to people about how they fund care, how they fund your fees, and be able to get through this, that's one of the last places, the last resort that people want to deal with is pulling money out of their house. Is that correct?
That's usually correct. Yeah.
So
Yep.
we try to demystify that and say, just a minute, why? And I wrote a book on it, in fact, called Home Equity and Reverse Mortgages. And you do such a good job in helping people that I want to give back a little bit. And you can get this book at Amazon for, I don't know, $16, $18. Or if you're one of Annalee's listeners, just email her and she'll send it over to us and we'll get you a free book. And because we got 600 offices across the country, and we'll get you a book because it's something that's so important that you understand what your biggest value is over there in bucket 3. There's 2, 3, 4, 500,000, $1 million sitting in bucket 3, and it can be incredibly helpful with either preventative things like long-term care insurance, or when you are in the situation, be able to pull money out like my parents did to use that money to stay at home. However, the vast majority of people don't like the idea of taking money out of their house. And it's mainly because of 4 reasons that people say, nope, I don't want to touch it. In fact, I want to tell you right now, if you go to your uncle who knows a little bit about financing, or that cousin who works in New York for a hedge fund company, or somebody, the neighbor who, well, he did something, he was a CFO for somebody, or you go to your financial advisor or your attorney, somebody that you're looking for that does not know things and hasn't done the research like Annalee has and her folks. And you ask them, what do you think about a reverse mortgage? They'll almost all tell you the same thing. Either A, you don't need it because you still have money left in bucket 2, or they'll say those things are bad, stay away from those. You'd be better off selling your house. Just don't touch those. Those are something you shouldn't mess with. Or they'll say something like, well, I'm not a fan of reverse mortgages. I don't think that's the best route for you to go. Those are very common things. If somebody tells you that, ask them very simply, why do you feel that way? Mm-hmm. And they usually don't have an answer because they don't know. They're like me 18 years ago. I don't know. I just heard they're bad. In fact, one of my chapters, chapter 6 in my book, is called Drugs, Sex, and Reverse Mortgages. That seems like kind of a strange chapter. One of the most read chapters for some reason. People turn to it quickly. And maybe that's why I wrote it that way. But the whole idea is that drugs, sex, and reverse mortgages all have something in common. Those 3 things can be very good or bad, depending upon how they're used. If you use drugs incorrectly, you can die of an overdose or you can become addicted. But drugs can also save your life and make your life better. Sex can be good or evil. Obviously, terrible things have been done, and with that, and very good things and wonderful things. Reverse mortgages are the same way. If they're used incorrectly and you pull all your money out of a reverse mortgage and take it down to a gambling casino, that's a horrible way to use it. And that's pretty negative. Now you've lost everything and the kids don't get anything. But if it's used as part of this plan to say, I know about Social Security, I know about my investments and my annuities, and I know about my house, where should I use this money? And you pull it out of bucket 3 to help make sure that you have a better retirement and better care during your retirement. That's something that is a wonderful use. And what's interesting is because my mom and dad pulled money out of bucket 3 to take care of their care, we ended up with a larger inheritance from bucket 2 because they did not get hit with the big tax thing. And so the kids were better off too. It wasn't only mom and dad that were better off because they could stay at home longer. Us kids were better off too. Not that that was the goal. We just wanted mom and dad to be taken care of, but we actually ended up better off. So that's really the 4 main reasons. That's one of the 4 main reasons why people say they don't like reverse mortgages. So the first way that people say, we abbreviate it into LIFE, L-I-F-E. And the first one is people think for L, I'm going to lose my house. And here we've worked 40 years or 20 years or whatever to get this house, and we've got it paid off or almost paid off, and now we're going to lose it. Nothing could be further from the truth. We're lenders. We are not landlords. We don't want anybody's house. We're in the business of lending money and collecting interest. And the unique thing is we're willing to wait for our interest until the end, until somebody passes away or until somebody permanently moves out of the house and has to go to assisted living. So in that situation, We do not own your house. We never want to own your house. And if you've got a $300,000 house and you use $100,000 with the accrued interest, well, at the end, the house is sold by your kids or by you if you're still alive, and you give us our $100,000 back, and the other $200,000 goes to your kids. So you didn't lose your house. You just gave up some of your equity, just like you would have spent some money out of your IRA or out of your mutual fund. Then the second, so really you don't lose anything. You're just spending something out of one bucket instead of the other bucket. So we cannot take over the ownership of your house. There were in the past some programs called shared equity programs that were also called reverse mortgages. That's a whole different deal. That's when you became a co-owner with the investor. Fairway doesn't do any of that. We will not become an owner with you in your house. You're the owner, we're lending you money. Big difference. And we got a bad name through some of those things where literally seniors lost their houses, and that's where it came in. Now, the second thing we kind of already touched on, and that's inheritance. People say, well, this might be good for me, but it's bad for our kids. I've already explained that us kids ended up better. Because mom and dad got sick, was there less of an inheritance? Sure, because some of the money had to go for their care. But the fact that it came out of the house instead of out of their IRA was better for us kids. And we still ended up with an inheritance. Not that that was our goal. We just wanted the best care for mom and dad. It just made more sense to pull it out of bucket 3 than out of bucket 2 at the financial planner's office. But the money was still there. It's just that then we spent it from the right place. So the inheritance, and what a lot of people have to realize, they say, well, at the end, the kids might get nothing. Well, that's true. My uncle died in 2009, and the value of his house went down, and he owed more on the house than it was worth. So his heirs got nothing out of his house. But there was $400,000 left in bucket 2, and they got that. So even if the house value goes down, you cannot leave a debt behind for your children that over exceeds. So it's not something that, oh, this might be okay for me, but now it's going to be a big mess for my kids. Not true. Simply does not work that way, because you're protected by the Federal Housing Administration. If you get a loan that is not protected by the Federal Housing Administration or is not truly a loan and it's shared equity, yeah, you want to be very careful about all of these vulture investors are coming in and saying, oh, we'll give you cash for your house. And you see billboards, do you want cash within 5 days for your house? Call us. That's a whole different deal. Those aren't mortgages. Reverse mortgages take usually a month, and you don't get your money in 5 days, like some of those vultures that come in, because they know that if they can do something quick, you might do it quicker. So you want to plan for something like this. The third issue is fear of foreclosure. Everybody knows who's a baby boomer about foreclosure. We heard about what happened during the Depression with our grandparents. I heard, I don't know how many times, about my grandpa being foreclosed on his farm, losing it in the Depression. So all of us baby boomers were raised by people that went through the Depression, or their parents went through the Depression. And everybody heard about foreclosures, which is kind of like losing the house, obviously. You will never get foreclosed on unless you don't pay your taxes or your insurance. The only requirement of a reverse mortgage is you pay your taxes and your insurance and you live in the house. That's it. You don't have to make any payments. Your payment is always zero. So you can borrow $100,000, $200,000, whatever you're allowed to do. And you can never be in a position where you have to pay it back until after you pass away or permanently move out of the house. And then the house pays it back. Not you, not your kids, not your estate. So that fear of foreclosure and getting kicked out in your old age can only happen with a forward mortgage, traditional mortgage, or traditional line of credit where you have to make payments. It's foolish to take out a forward mortgage to get at your equity when you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and you need help, because you don't have the ability to earn money and pay it back like you did when you were in your 40s and 50s. So people that do take out forward mortgages, dangerous and not a good idea in that situation. So we know that people should not have a mortgage payment in retirement. Most of the time, they should not have a forward mortgage in retirement at all. But a reverse mortgage is specifically designed for those of us that are older. So next month, I do my reverse mortgage and my payment goes to zero for the rest of my life. But if I want to make payments, I can for tax purposes or whatever. If I don't want to make payments, I don't have to make a payment if I live to be 150. That makes it much easier for me to afford my long-term care insurance, to have more money in bucket 2, to give more money to my kids and grandkids while I'm alive. It's simply a better situation all the way around. And I would encourage anybody that doesn't have a need, that's maybe they're in their 60s and they're taking care of their 80, 90-year-old parents, do your reverse mortgage now before you get into a have to situation. On the scenarios when you're calling Annalee and okay, all the stuff hit the fan and now we're in trouble. We don't know what to do next for care. We don't know where to do with mom and dad. We don't know what to do, where we're going to get the money, so on and so forth. So if you can plan for it, do it now.
And I think it's helpful. I think it's helpful to let people know too, and this is what I tell families on every single inquiry call, and I educate them when they decide that they want to work together. Because a lot of families and consumers just aren't educated. They don't know what they don't know, right? So like before the pandemic, home care costs anywhere from $21 to $28 an hour across the country. Now, because of staffing shortages, operating costs of these home care companies went up because of extra training, because of COVID, PPE, because there's such a massive shortage of healthcare workers. They're offering enormous sign-on bonuses. So all of that costs the company money, right? So who has to pay for that? It's the consumer, because that's how it is in business. If my costs go up, then of course I have to charge more, right? So what home care is costing now, I have clients paying anywhere from $28 to $60 an hour, depending on the case. So depending on how complex the case is and what the need is and what shifts that they're looking for. So Medicare, I just want listeners to know, because there's assumptions out there. And one of them is that Medicare will pay for everything. All things aging. It's not going to cost me or my parents anything to age because Medicare will pay for that. I heard that this morning on my 10 o'clock call, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And when you're under the false impressions and assumptions, then you're obviously not putting the pieces of the puzzle together properly, right? So then when I meet with them, they're totally blindsided because they're like, what do you mean Medicare doesn't pay for all of this stuff? I'm like, no, you have to pay for it out of pocket or long-term care insurance or VA benefits or reverse mortgage options. So it's really important. I'm glad you're on the podcast today, because it's really important for families to know that it is not cheap to age. If you age and you're living, so if you're aging, you need to have patient advocates, you need to have care coordinators, you need to have care managers, you need to have home care. If those are your goals to stay at home, those are all extra expenses that your financial advisor may not be sharing with you. Right.
Well, they're simply not as qualified as you, Annalee. I've dealt with financial advisors. I teach CE classes for financial advisors. I've dealt with thousands of them. They don't know half of what you know.
No.
They can't advise their clients on what you're teaching them.
Right. And if they're not addressing these common aging issues in your financial plan, you're going to have a shortfall, most likely. Because I've got clients paying $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 a month to stay at home because that's their goal and they have the finances to do so, or other solutions in place to help them manage that. But what's great about these reverse mortgages that your company offers is that there's like a discovery process, right? Because you may be deemed that it's not the right fit for you, but there's safeguards in place. There's safeguards in place that help determine, is a reverse mortgage the right solution for what your particular needs are? Can you talk a little bit about what that process looks like?
Yes. First of all, your first scenario is you come to us. And if somebody says, I need money for the next 6 months and dad's in terminal illness and pretty soon we're going to have hospice, forget about reverse mortgage. The costs of going into a reverse mortgage is too expensive for a 6-month process. There's better alternatives than in that situation, because this is designed for something that's longer term, 2, 3, 4 years or longer, not a quick fix thing. And then after our people go through it, you also go through a third party FHA approved counseling session to make sure that you know what you're doing. If you're the power of attorney for your parents, or if your parents can still are still coherent, that they can go over, then you go through that. And we cannot even start the appraisal ordering until you get a counseling session. So this is something that is not a quick sign here and we got your house or something like that. This is definitely a process that first of all, our people are trained. We had the privilege of you training several hundred of our people just a couple of weeks ago. That is the kind of thing that we do with our people first, so they understand and have compassion and realize what's going through. Many of them are like me, that they've went through a similar thing with their parents. It's not something that you're going to be railroaded into or tricked into. The danger is because people are afraid of it. They don't talk about it at all. Find out whether or not it fits. If it doesn't fit, we'll tell you before you spent a dime.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to just share, because I met many of your team. You know, there were many of your teammates on that webinar that I did, that training webinar, and I had many of them reach out to me afterwards saying, oh my gosh, what a great service that CareRight provides, because our families need that. Your team are personable, right? They're not in this for the transactional piece of it. They're in there, they're doing what they do because they really wholeheartedly want to help families be successful aging in place at home if it's possible for them.
Well, the difference is, Annalee, is that most reverse mortgages in the past have been sold via an 800 number.
Yeah.
Our people live in the communities. They know a lot of our clients, and there's certainly more of an interest in helping their neighbors. And we get rid of people very quickly because bad press can go quickly. And if there's somebody that's only concerned about lining their pockets or doing something to make a sale, they don't last at Fairway. They're gone. Yeah. And that is something that's important. And I'm so glad to have you see that, because that is absolutely our critical culture thing, that you've got to care more about your clients than about yourself. And fortunately, we have a whole bunch of very selfless people that do a great job of that.
You do. You even have like a 4-decade-long Santa that is on your team.
Yes. He does Santa for nursing homes. He told you.
He does Santa for nursing homes. So these are like real life people who truly care about your outcomes, your family's outcomes. So what is in closing, is there any other just kind of tip or suggestion or way to reach you if they want to learn more or get your book?
Sure. The most important thing I can tell you is, I'm not going to change your mind in a half-hour podcast, and I don't expect to. I wouldn't have changed my mind. I was so sure that these things were a ripoff that I simply, told everybody, obviously, to stay away from them in my foolishness. And so, but all I'm asking you to do is be different than me, be open-minded. And at least I was when I went to Miami, and say, hey, I don't think this is for us. I don't really like them, but I'm going to try it, and I'm going to find out about it. And that's really the main thing that I want you to do. You can contact Annalee and she'll send it on, but she's super busy. If you want to email us directly to get a copy of the book, that's our contact information of being able to reverse events at fairwaymc.com. Make sure you know there's 2 E's in the middle. And you can go on our website to do some research about the company. But ask us. And remember, we do forward mortgages also. There's some people that take out forward mortgages, the kids do, to be able to help their parents remodel the house to have their parents move in with them or whatever. But obviously I specialize in this. So just be open-minded. It's a very simple book, 90 pages, large print like I like, and a few pictures thrown in here and there. And just investigate. Don't say no to something until you know what you're saying no to, because it made all the difference for my mom and dad, all the difference for my uncle and aunt, and hundreds of other people that I've dealt with in the last 18 years. And then I hear stories later from people. I'm on an airplane flight and I tell them what I do, and they say, oh, if I only would have known about this with my mother, it would have ended so much better. So just reach out, and we don't want to hear those things about, oh, I wish I would have known. We want to inform you now and help you with your family. And if you're already over 62, like I am, and doing mine next month, simply take a look at your own situation, put it in place before you need it. The best time to buy an umbrella is when it's not raining. The best time to change oil in your car is before it's smoking on the side of the road. So, do some preventive maintenance, take a look at long-term care insurance or life insurance with long-term care riders, so that when the time comes, my kids know what Annalee's phone number is. If they need help, they already know a lot of learning from me, but if they need help, they know that they can call Annalee at Care Right and know what to do with me or with my wife.
Know what to do with you. It doesn't cost them to learn more, right? They can call call and have like a free consult, so to speak, just to see, is this the right fit for you or your family?
Exactly. The service that Annalee provides, first of all, is unique. Yes, there's a few other companies that do some of these things regionally and stuff, and geriatric care managers and so on that, one person shops. Annalee can do this anywhere in the country and with her staff. That's one of the things at Fairway that we're concerned about when we recommend people. I ask Annalee in the beginning, what if a whole bunch of people call you? Are you going to be able to handle it? Well, yep. She won't by herself, but she's got a staff. That's right. What she's providing knowledge at that point, you don't have time to learn it yourself when your dad has a stroke. Yeah. You need to know what to do right now.
Yeah, there's too much of a learning curve for families to figure all of this aging and care and who pays for what and how does that get paid and what do we qualify for. It's too big of a learning curve to try to figure that out during a crisis. So our ideal clients are people that have the intellect to say, look, you know what, I'm seeing the writing on the wall with mom and dad, or mom's starting to lose weight, or dad's dementia is progressing. What do we do now so that we can safeguard them as they age and as they become more vulnerable and more dependent on usually strangers, i.e. caregivers, to take care of them? So the time is now to start looking into these options and start doing those consults. It does not, for Care Right, it does not cost you anything to it takes 30 minutes of your time to find out, okay, is this a solution for me, or are we heading in the wrong direction here on our own as a family? How are we going to put all this together and button up an actual aging plan that makes sense for mom and dad? So,
and the best advice I can give your listeners is don't wait. We saw a bunch of warning signs before my dad even had his stroke. And I'm embarrassed because I'm in the business. I've seen a lot of this stuff. Don't wait for that. Have some things in place on the care plan. Annalee does a bunch of preventive stuff. And something, if it costs some money, it's worth it, because it's going to cost a lot more if you do it later. That's right. Planning ahead is so critical. If you have not engaged with Annalee and her team at Care Right, and what a perfect name, Care Right, it's right to care. She does the caring right. You can pull all kinds of things out of there. And if you say, well, we don't have enough money, there's probably 100,000 or more sitting in mom and dad's living room that can be used. And it doesn't cost 100,000 to get Care Right to help you. So make the plans beforehand and use the opportunity before it's a crisis.
Well, and the reality is when families, because again, families, when they call me, nothing is going well. No one ever calls me and is like, oh, you just seem fun. Let's just get together and talk about mom and dad. It's like things have happened and not good things. And so, yeah, an aging plan is going to cost.
And Annalee, on that point right there, how does the family siblings get along? Does it improve their relationships? Do they like each other more, or does stuff happen that they never talk to each other again?
That's exactly my point, is when families choose to wait, because that there's resources out here to help you as a family, right? So, but when families choose to wait until they are in a crisis, emotions are high, time is limited, big decisions need to be made quickly. Families are not getting along. 85% of my clients, I'm doing family mediation with them alongside of trying to facilitate their family meetings so that we can put the actual plan together. But their relationships are so strained. The caregiving falls usually on the shoulder of one person. It's the local person, and they're usually feeling very isolated and angry and resentful towards their parents, but also towards their siblings because people aren't helping. So yes, an aging plan costs money, but when you think about how much energy you expend on anger, resentment, lost sleep, missed work opportunities, or your family at home saying, look, we need you here at the house. We can't have you fly into Arizona every 2 weeks because dad keeps falling. We need to be putting that plan together because it is costing you something. Emotional energy, your physical health, your career, your family, if you do nothing. So
certainly true.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to help you do what you do. If we can just help a few families because of this podcast and providing them with some dollars so that they can afford to do what you do so well, we spent our time well today. Thanks for the opportunity.
Right. You bet. Thanks so much, Harlan. Keep up the good work.
You as well. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you for tuning in to the Care Right podcast. We hope today's discussion has provided you with valuable insights. If so, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our podcast with others who might find it helpful. Remember, Care Right is more than just a podcast. It's a community dedicated to supporting family caregivers with comprehensive care planning, crisis management, and resources for every stage of aging. Stay connected with us for future episodes as we continue to explore essential topics in aging planning, elder care, and financial planning. Until next time, take care, plan wisely, and remember, you're not alone in your caregiving journey.